Do you guys have like, I know it's different for everyone, but when you make an adjustment, let's say somebody is plateaued and you know they're being adherent and you know you need to do something to increase this deficit. Do you guys have a starting spot as far as like a calorie decrease? Like mine is like typically 200. Like if somebody plateaus, like again, it can be different depending on the situation, but like typically, I don't need to do a 3,500 calorie deficit a week increase to get the things rolling again. It's like if I shave 200 calories off every day, which is only a 1,400 calorie difference, like sometimes that's enough to get progress where they're actually losing weight and get ready again. So yeah, do you guys have have you guys noticed that as well?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the 200 is probably about where I average, whether that's caloric restriction or an increase in expenditure. But it's also in extreme cases where somebody is, very heavy, and we can make a larger adjustment. Let's say they have their maintenance intake is really high. I might go a little bit more aggressive than that. But I'd say if you were to average across everybody, like 150 to 200 is a good, safe place to be for most people. Like you can't really screw it up too bad, unless you're like truly at maintenance and they've stalled. And in your case, that could be the difference between like losing 0.25% a week and being back in range, and so that's sort of when I pull that lever for just like a couple hundred calories. But if somebody's like truly plateaued and it hasn't budged and I know they're compliant and we've waited it out, I might get a little bit more aggressive. But there's just multiple factors, like looking at rates leading up to that point before I can make that call.
How lean they are too. Today I was talking to an athlete, and he's at the point in his prep where if he loses 2 kilos, he's going to lose a third of his total body fat on his body. So that's roughly 8% at like 69 is what he weighs. So crazy when you think about it. So I'm like, you know what? That deficit we're running, it might be like 150 or whatever at this point, 200 on slightly busier day. We're just going to run with that thing because that's appropriate given how little we have to go. So the exact opposite, if someone has like targets much bigger, it's like we just blow chunks off this body, then at that point it's like, all right, 200-300, kind of depending on like how they're doing, what they can tolerate. I think negotiating isn't a bad tactic either. It's like, okay, I want to make an adjustment. It's like, how much more steps can you afford to do? Would you like to do some formal cardio? Make it a combination of both. And I think during the early stages of fat loss, it's like, all right, let's negotiate. Like, what is going to be, what is going to cost the least amount of stress in your life? As we get deeper into it, then at that point, I'm like, okay, this is what I would strongly prefer is how the discussion goes. And typically, so for example, like women tend to be a little bit more tolerant of like cardiovascular exercise. Like it's something that I'm sure you've realized this too, Brian. Like sometimes you write things for women in powerlifting and you're like, that would kill me. That would absolutely kill me. And we're 10 days out from a meet, I'd be done. And they do just fine, right?
Yeah.
They're just smaller systems. So especially if they've been doing cardio and already like pretty fit, like that seems to cause less harm than taking food away. And then obviously if you have like a big heavyweight, like, bodybuilder, it's like, all right, like with those guys, it's like, that's systematically it's a different animal. So yeah, usually when we get to those, like, we guess you would call it like the intermediate ranges of fat loss, like where you are going from like high teens men to like low teens. Right. Maybe getting close to that 10% body fat. At that point, I'm a little bit more picky about like how we adjust things. But at the end, it's like up to them. Like if I have a dude that's, 190 pounds and he's like, I seriously love running and it doesn't impact my training and please don't starve me. We're going to do that because that's the thing with fat loss trauma. It's just, again, it's not until you see it that you're like, wow, this can mess up people for years and years and years. So having them play a little bit of they see it as a negative. At the start, they're like, really, you're asking me? But I'm like, no, this is a good thing. Like, you have to be a participant when it comes to what we're doing to you. Like, I want you to have some agency, and this is how we add an educational component to the coaching. Again, this is assuming they kind of know all the pros and cons of things, and they have a little bit of experience. Maybe with someone newer, it's like, all right, let me tell you what I think you should be doing, because you talk about food in every check-in or something like that.
Yeah, usually it's like you said, it's saying like, okay, how much more leeway do you have for adding additional steps? Or, you can start the conversation with, okay, we want to pull back a couple hundred calories here. How we go about it's not as important. So like, what would your preference be? And that way they're not, they know the objective, but they have some autonomy in how it can be achieved, I think is helpful for sure.